Everyone, and welcome to SummerWorks Career Sneak Peek Speaker Series featuring Annalee Shelton. We're glad you can join us this afternoon. I am Michelle Galbraith with Amy Cell Talent. I'll be your facilitator, and joining with me today on behalf of SummerWorks is Olivia Ordonez. She's been working with the youth all this summer, so we really appreciate her support there. Just a little bit about Anna Shelton. She is the Membership Experience Manager at U of M Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Research, ICPSR. Anna will be sharing her career in nonprofit, and eventually she transitioned to marketing with an eye towards making the world a better place. She will talk about what experience and training has helped her get here. And with that, I'd like to introduce Anna, who has been an employer and a mentor for SummerWorks participants. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Michelle. It is such an absolute delight to be here. Thank you for having me. All right, I am just going to share my screen quickly. Michelle, that means I'll take over for you. Thank you. All righty. Let me just pull this up. Perfect. Thank you so much. And Michelle is going to be watching that chat window for me because I cannot see it while I'm presenting, which is such a silly thing. But if you do have questions, please do send those in through the chat or the Q&A button at any time. We would absolutely love to get them, and I would be happy to answer them in the moment. Great. So this presentation is called Nonprofit to Marketing, a Career Path Case Study. And my theme for today, what I would like to leave you with, is the idea that you just never know what this will bring you. And by this, I don't mean this presentation. By this, what I mean is whatever experience you're going through, whatever volunteer work you're doing, or random job you have that you hate, or whatever it is, you never know what it's going to bring you. And I'm going to show you a couple of instances of that through my own life, of how I got to where I am right now. And I hope that you'll be able to see kind of how that translates to the work that you might be doing in your own positions. And I'm just going to attempt to move this bar so that I can actually see. Perfect. Okay, there we go. So a couple things to mention about that. All of your experiences are important as long as you're trying. And I say that because sometimes you fall flat on your butt, and that's totally fine. That experience will help you in a job interview. When someone says, tell me about a time that you failed, you can tell them because you have fallen flat on your butt. If you're not trying, your experience won't help you. But if you are trying, then really whatever it is that you're doing is actually really going to help. And again, I'll show you some examples of that. You also never know which of your experiences is going to help you later on in your life or your career. So some of the things that I thought were just kind of fillers or something to do in between the two things that I meant to be doing, those things that I did as the filler were the thing that actually brought me to my next phase. So you never know which experiences are going to be the best. And then I want to mention that doesn't just include jobs. So that's volunteering, that's your side hustles, that's your random Instagram that you're creating on the side. It's your friends, it's your failed projects, all of that counts. So I'm going to do a quick introduction, and I'm going to start that by saying I live on a busy street, and I'm actually in Los Angeles. So it is a little earlier in the day, and people are honking and lawn mowing and goodness knows what else. So if you're hearing background noise, that's what it is. So who am I? I am many different pieces. So part of me is this person who hosted a TED at UCLA. That's me presenting there. This is also me. I'm a runner. I have a 4-year-old kiddo who is running with me. So there's lots of different pieces of yourself. And again, you never know which part of you is going to lead to, kind of your next phase. So for example, I was recently, we had a director position at the Institute for Social Research at the University of Michigan. That position opened up. And because I had been talking to someone about running, They reached out to me and said, hey, I think that you do something that's related to this position. Would you be willing to be on that committee? And because I was willing to be on that committee, because I had met this person who was running, then I got to get connected with someone who is very high up in the institution, who I have been trying to get to be a host on a podcast, or to be a guest on a podcast. And because now they know who I am, because I'm on this committee, because I talked to somebody about running, I was able to get them on a podcast that helps me in my work. So you never know what might lead to that next thing. So I'm going to read through this so that you can kind of see how I describe myself. This is actually taken copy paste from my website. So this is how I explain myself when I am describing myself to someone who might want to hire me for a job, or if I'm going up for a volunteer position or something like that. This is what people are going to see about me. So I studied English literature in undergrad because I love a good narrative, which is true. And then I studied marketing, kind of corporate responsibility and social entrepreneurship to become an effective change maker. I've worked with orphans and taught small business practices to widows in Nairobi in Kenya. While I was there, I adopted an elephant. Her name is Kwanzaa. She's fantastic. And then I received a certificate of commendation from the city of Los Angeles for my work with the American Red Cross. And I'll talk more about that here in a minute. I built a fashion blog, which feels like 100 years ago. And I wrote a couple hundred posts more. I won some awards and I met some really incredible people through that. And I mentioned that because that blog was just something I did to keep my creative spirit up. And then later, when I was going up for a communications position and they asked me if I had any writing experience or a portfolio that I could show them of my writing, I was able to show them the work that I was doing in my current job. I didn't actually have a lot of writing that I could show in a portfolio, but I did have a blog. And by showing that blog, I was able to get that position. So you never know what's going to lead to your next thing. I have worked in startup, in nonprofit, in higher education, and in for-profit. I did used to live in Michigan, so I moved to the Midwest to try winter and to double down on potatoes. And I got cold and I moved back to the West Coast. And I have been proud to have been elected to represent a few thousand of my neighbors in Ann Arbor while I was there. So I put all of this in there because I want people to know, I want people to see some of my humor if they're looking at me for a potential job. I want them to know that, yes, I was in Michigan for a while and then I moved back, and I want them to have some reason for why those things happened. So they have a sense of, my decision making. And I also want to mention that I was an elected official when I was in Ann Arbor. And I think this is my way of sharing that in a way that is very approachable. And then finally, my community clients have included cancer patients, data scientists, influencers, professors, people who care about money, people who care about planet, and many more. And I built community everywhere. And the reason that I put this in is because I want people to see themselves in this. So if I am saying, say I'm applying for a job at a nonprofit, they can come to my website and they see, oh, she's already worked with nonprofits. If I'm applying for a job at a university, they can come here and see, oh, she's already worked with professors. So I'm strategically putting in some of these words that I know that they're going to be looking for. And again, all of this is just on my main page of my website, so that people landing there, what I'm trying to do is give the most possible people a reason to continue to engage with my website and to reach out to me. All right, so let's do a quick poll. What I do now is, Michelle totally nailed it. We have the worst acronym ever. I work at a place called the Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Research, and it is at the Institute for Social Research at Michigan. So here's our poll. Have you heard of ICPSR? And Michelle's going to put that poll up real quick. And Michelle, if you have put that poll up, I can't see it. So you may have to just.
Oh, yes, it's been launched.
Perfect. So I will let you leave that up for a minute.
Yep, and then I'll share the results now, Anna.
Fantastic. Can you tell me what they say because I can't see them?
Oh, so sorry. Okay. Have you heard of ICPSR? And then about 25% are familiar with the organization. And then 75% want to learn more.
Oh, fantastic.
Mhm.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle.
Mhm.
Perfect. Well, you are in good company. When I first applied for this job, I had never heard of ICPSR before. I actually applied for this job because in the job posting, it said that it's a data related position, which I thought, oh, I don't know anything about data. I shouldn't apply for this. But in the position posting, it said they were looking for fun people to work with fun people or something like that. And I remember looking at this position and saying, there's no way data people are fun. That can't be true, but I'll just apply anyway, just to see. And then it turns out they are quite fun and they're brilliant and they're just a load of good people. If you ever get a chance to work with anyone over here, it's a great spot. Great. Okay, Michelle, can you pop up that next one for me? So this is another poll. How do you understand the skills that are required for a marketing position? And this is just in general. This isn't a test. I'm not going to ask you about, what's the most important. But generally, if you're thinking about a marketing position, do you feel like you have a sense of what those skills are, or do you feel like you're, kind of just wavering in the water, not quite sure yet, even, what direction to kind of go?
All
And
right.
Michelle,
So we do have some results. And as of right now, 50% are familiar, and then 50% are here to learn more.
okay, fantastic.
Mhm.
So if you are in either camp, if you would put into the chat just kind of some general skills that you think are important for a marketing position, and then some maybe questions like, are there any specific skills you want to know more about, or maybe you think that a particular skill might be needed, but you're not really sure. And if you could just post those into the chat right now, that would be great. So what are the skills that you're wondering about? What skills do you think you need? And I'm just going to give a second for that to pop up in the chat. And if nothing pops up in the chat, I will assume that that means that we're a little hesitant about maybe what those skills might be. And we're going to talk through the skills that I use in my job anyway, and we'll get some concrete examples.
They're looking to learn more. It's a little quiet.
Okay, fantastic. This is my kind of group. I like it. All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Michelle. So I'm going to chat about all of those things. And again, feel free to pop anything in the chat, any questions as they come up. But I hope that I will give you some good exploration. So what I do now, like Michelle said, I am the membership experience manager for ICPSR. And kind of in a nutshell, what that means is that I help manage a membership. So we are the Inter-University Consortium. The consortium means that we are a group of members of this of ICPSR. And what that means is that we have about 700 institutions who are all part of that consortium. And between them, you have to pay to be part of the consortium because we are a data archive. And in order to get the data, to get access to the data, you have to pay to be part of that consortium. And that is about $4 million in yearly membership. So that's part of my job, is to make sure that we are supporting that. And that $4 million goes directly to, well, it goes directly to a lot of things, but partially it goes to salaries for my colleagues. So I take this very, very seriously. I am responsible to make sure that my members are happy, because if my members are not happy and they choose not to return, that is very directly a possibility that some of my colleagues would no longer have funding for their positions, and I don't ever want to be responsible for that. So this is a big important thing for me, to make sure that I'm making sure that those members are happy. I also provide user support. I work very closely on diversity in a few different ways. So, for example, we work very hard to make sure that our website is accessible in multiple ways. But for example, we make sure that all of the images that we use on our website have enough color contrast so that if someone is visually impaired, that they're able to see the images. We make sure that all of our registration forms are able to be used by screen readers and by people who, might not be able to click around on a website, who might be using their keyboard exclusively. So we make sure that, diversity is a big part of what we do. And it dives down deep. It's part of our core. Also, I see a raised hand, although I can't see who it is. So if that person wants to message in a chat, I see you have a question about that. And Michelle, I'm going to lean on you here.
Okay, it was a mistake.
Got it. I've been there too. Fantastic. So then I also do internal communications. And this is important depending on how big your organization is. We have about 130 staff members. So it is really important that we be able to communicate across those different teams, especially since we're all remote right now. It's not like we're all popping into each other's offices. So internal communications is actually a really vibrant part of what I do. I also now host a podcast, which is super fun. And then I laugh as I put this in, but there's kind of this joke of you get other duties as assigned. And often that's put into a job description. So you may see that as you're applying for jobs. What that means is, for my job, what that means is that sometimes I'm carrying chairs back and forth from an event. And sometimes it means that I'm trying to figure out, why is Google Chat not working today? So other duties as assigned really means, dive into the work that needs to be done that day to keep the work flowing. All right,
Real
excellent.
quick,
So,
Anna.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned a podcast. Is it associated with ICPSR or is it something different?
It is associated with ICPSR. It's called Data Brunch. So if you are like on your computer and you have Google open, you can search for Data Brunch with ICPSR. It is really fun. It's hosted by me and one of my colleagues in my team at ICPSR, and we talk about how data relates to real life. So like, for example, we had a person on who was talking about stress and COVID and how stress affects our bodies and how that might affect our responses to COVID. We had someone who was talking about cruise ships and how tourists spending money in cruise ports can affect the lives of women in those cruise ports. And all of this is data-based, right? So we have these people come in and they talk about how they use these data in a way that might make people's lives better or affect people's lives in multiple ways. We have journalists coming in who talk about how they use data and they have to learn to make sure that they are very unbiased in the way that they use data because they might be writing an article for the New York Times or for NPR. And they need to make sure that it is data-based and evidence-based, but also that they are using those data in a responsible way. So I hope that answers your question. Again, yes, that is Data Brunch, and it's if you Google Data Brunch from ICPSR. And the reason it's called Data Brunch is because Dory, my co-host, and I both love brunch, and we were thinking, oh, if we could only get some of these experts to just sit down around brunch and talk to us about what they do. So that's kind of how that was born. All right, so I'm going to show you a quick video about what ICPSR is. Michelle, I think that the sound should work, but if it doesn't, just pop in and then we'll start over from the beginning. All right, excellent. Oh, hang on a second, pulling us up out here. There we go. All right, so that is in a nutshell what ICPSR is. And Michelle, pop in again to let me know if you can't hear me, or if anything is not working.
All clear.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. So ICPSR is, in a nutshell, a data archive, and we, like it says, we are a big data archive. So every 2 minutes around the clock, someone in the world is coming to ICPSR to find data. And we have all kinds of data. So we have data from the FBI. We have data on COVID. We have a whole archive of data on COVID. We have data on emergency room visits. We have data on whether people believe in aliens. We have data on everything. We have narratives from slaves. We have the US transgender survey. There is so much data here. And it's incredibly important because what people do with that data matters. So we have people, excuse me, who are coming to ICPSR to find data to make decisions on whether to create policy, for people who are disabled. And they're coming to ICPSR to make decisions on whether police should wear body cameras. And they're coming here to find the data to make their case for that policy or for whatever it is that they're trying to do. And that is, again, not something that I take lightly. We are literally talking about people who will change our lives. They could, the people who are writing these articles or writing these legislative bills, their work affects how you and I spend our days. So this is important, and it is vital that they know how to access these data and use them respectfully and responsibly. I always laugh about the Spider-Man quote, "With great power comes great responsibility." It feels like that, right? It feels like what, we need to make sure that we are helping people responsibly use those data. So all of that to say, that is what ICPSR does. Oh, no, we don't need that again. It was great the first time, but we're good. Okay, perfect. So my job, I am the membership experience manager. I'm just looking at the time at ICPSR. And my role is part of the membership and communications team. And this team also includes our website operations. It includes our content manager, who manages all of our news articles and our social media and all of the content. It includes our graphic designer and many more. And we report to the membership director, and this is our boss, Linda. Remember when I said that the job position said that we like to have fun? We really do. We actually have a blast doing our job. We work really hard, but we also laugh a lot. And Linda is part of the senior management team. So that means that the work that I do rolls directly up to what the senior leadership of ICPSR is seeing and how they're making decisions. And then again, ICPSR is a center at the University of Michigan's Institute for Social Research. So the Institute for Social Research has 5 centers, and we are one of those. So here's kind of a look at what I do every day. And I'm not going to walk through each of these. I'm not going to go through the links, but when you get the slides, you'll see some of these have links so you can see exactly what it is that I'm talking about. But these are some of the tasks that I do every day. So far and away, I do emails all the time, every day, every hour. There's always emails. And also just kind of team communications in general. So we are a Google campus. So that means that I use Gmail, which I prefer, but I have used Outlook in the past. And depending on where you're working, you may use Outlook or something else as well. But we do use Gmail, and that means that we also use GChat. And if you haven't used that, what that means is that when my email is open, I also have a little chat function that's open, and the GChat, someone can message me real quick on the GChat. It doesn't pop up as an email. It just pops up as like a chat message, and I can respond to it there. And we're on that all day, every day. We also use something called Slack. Could I see, I don't know if you can raise hands, but if we can see a show of hands for raised hands, how many of you have heard of Slack? Cool. Okay, fantastic. So I'm seeing a few people. If you haven't used Slack, I'm happy to, share some of the experiences with you. But it's a much more fun and more sort of modern way of communicating. That said, email is what I do all day, every day. So and you'll see towards the end, I will mention that, get familiar with email, because that's how your professional work is probably going to be done, at least for the next decade or so. I do a lot of virtual meetings. Mostly those are on Zoom and Google Meets, but we also sometimes use a system called Teams, which is Microsoft's version of virtual meetings. I do a lot of project management. I do that with two systems. So one is called Google Tasks, which is inherent in my Google. You know what? I wonder if I can just show you. Let me see if it'll let me. Okay, here we go. We're going to try and share this. Stop share, screen share. Here we go. Haha. Okay, so hopefully now you can see, this is my Gmail. This is my drafts folder. What you can see over here, this is Google Tasks. So Google Tasks allows me to take things that are in my email, and I can put them right over here into my tasks list. And then when I'm ready, I can go back and actually go into that email, take care of whatever it is that I need to do there. And then I can check this mark, and that takes it away. That means that I've completed that task. All right. Oh, you know what? While I'm here, let me show you another tool that I use. Open this again. Sure. Another tool that I use here is called Copper. So this is Copper. And you can see this is a joke account. Copper is a system that allows me to track relationship management over time. So I have this person who I've emailed with. Lynette Holter is a real person who works at ICPSR. She is very influential. So Lynette Holter is Dr. Lynette Holter, and she is our Director of Resources and Training and Education. She's phenomenal. She's also quite a joker. So she has listed herself as lackey here. But what you can see here is that I can track different things about that person. So I can see things like, oh, they participated in this event, or I can track their contact information. And if I click into this, I can also see when was the last time that anyone emailed them, and have they ever used data at ICPSR? Have they ever deposited data at ICPSR? So things like that, and that's called customer relationship management, and that's a useful tool. Okay, let me share here again. And Michelle, pop in. I'm seeing things come up in the chat, but that may just be
I'm just sharing items like the podcast, as well as the Google ecosystem.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. Thank you so much for doing that. Okay, cool. So let me share this back. Okay, excellent. So Google Tasks is primarily what I use for project management, but I also use a system called Trello, which is kind of like a virtual version of a whiteboard. And what's useful about that is that you can have it on your phone, you can have it on your computer, you can share it with other people. So it's a really collaborative way of creating a virtual working space. I also create a lot of social media for ICPSR. We split social media into a couple of different positions. So we have our content manager, whose job it is to listen to social media. So she is, in addition to creating content, she is making sure that she's watching our social media, looking at people's comments, listening to see if people are tagging us. So she has a very hefty social media job. My job is more making sure that we are promoting things like, how do you become a member of ICPSR? And here's some new data that's available at ICPSR. So I do that, and I use a couple of tools to do that. One is a system called Hootsuite, which is a social media, here, let me see if I can show it to you. Okay, I'm gonna stop my share, and I'm gonna come over here, and I'm gonna go to Hootsuite, and I'm gonna share my screen. Sure. Okay, so this is Hootsuite, and you can see Hootsuite here. Let me log in real quick. So Hootsuite is a way to pre-schedule your social media ahead of time. So this is something that we use very, very frequently. This is what our Hootsuite template looks like, our dashboard. And then this is how you can see us pre-scheduling posts ahead of time. So you can see some of those posts that are pre-scheduled here. And that's our way of making sure that we share all the things that we need to share, and that we share them at the times that work for our audience and that kind of thing. All right, let me pull this back up. Okay, and share. All right, great. And so then other things that we use, I help write our newsletters and our website content. And to do that, we use things like MailChimp, which is a newsletter creation tool. There's a system called Drupal, which is actually a kind of an open source coding software. And that is sort of the behind the scenes of a lot of our web pages at ICPSR. Also WordPress, if you've ever done a blog before and you've ever used WordPress, it's very similar. Just kind of a souped up version of the one that you might have used for free. I also do a ton of virtual presentations like this. I use PowerPoint and I use Google Slides, and I also use Canva. Can I get a raise of hands? Have you ever used Canva before? So raise hands if you've used Canva. Okay, cool. Raise your hands if you have, and then put your hands down. Raise your hand if you have not used Canva. Cool, cool. And I think I'm the only one who can see these, or maybe not. I'm not sure. Okay, perfect. Fantastic. So Canva, if you haven't used it before, is a really cool free tool that allows you to create some basic graphic design. And there's lots of things that you can do with it. One spectacular thing you can do is create resumes that look really good. So if you haven't created resumes in Canva yet, check that out. And I use it for presentations all the time. We also use, like I said, customer relationship management software like Copper, which I showed you, that's connected right into my email. We also do a lot of user support, and we use a system called Jira. And what Jira is it's basically a ticketing system that allows people to send in an email to a shared email address, and that creates a ticket. And then the person who manages those tickets, those virtual tickets, can send me an email and say, hey, Anna, someone had a question about membership. And then it assigns that ticket to me. I can go in and work on that ticket. And then as soon as I'm done, I can click that it's resolved, or I can pass it to someone else and say, okay, I've done my part of this ticket. Now, can you help this person? So it's a quick way to manage things that might come in from a user support angle. If you've ever sent a question to a customer service desk, like, Hulu or something like that, they probably use a very similar system. It may even be Jira. And then I do a lot of spreadsheets and a lot of metrics management. Most of that I do in Google Sheets. And the reason that we use Google Sheets is because it's very easy to share it with someone else. So I can do my part of, say I'm looking at a website, and I'm looking at the number of people who have visited that website in the last month. And then I'm also looking at, of those people, how many of them clicked through to different links that are on that website. And then I'm also looking at how many people came to that website and then went to another page on our general website versus how many people came to that page and then left ICPSR altogether and went shopping or something else. So I can create a spreadsheet that shows that, and then I can send that to my boss, and my boss can take that spreadsheet and then she can add a column for, how much did we spend on advertising for those different pages? And then she can send that to her boss, who can combine that with the other spreadsheets of other people's web pages and put together a report from all of those things together. It's much easier to do that on Google Sheets than it is by sending each other Excel spreadsheets. I use Excel all the time too, but I much prefer Google Sheets. So we use that all the time. So those are some of the tools that I use. I wanted to make sure that you had a sense of what those are. If any of these are not familiar to you, and you're interested in getting a job in kind of the marketing or communication space, I would suggest that you take a screenshot of this, or you'll get the slides after, and just kind of dig into some of these. A lot of them have free training so that you can take the training on how to use them. But chances are you'll be asked, hey, do you know how to use Google Sheets? Do you know how to use Hootsuite? And you can get some pretty good training for free if you haven't used them already. All right, so what is a typical day like for me? And again, I'm looking at the time. So I typically start at 8 a.m. with email. For me, it's a little bit different. I actually started at 6 a.m. this morning because I am on the West Coast and you all are on the East Coast. So I mentioned that to say I love my job. And when I moved back to the West Coast, I didn't want to give up what I do because I love it. And that means that sometimes I have to wake up for a 6 a.m. meeting, and that's rough, but it's worth it to me because I care so much about what I do and the people that I work with. But typically I start at 8 a.m. I do about 3 meetings a day. Usually those are hour long. About half the time they're a meeting that I am hosting. And so what that means is that I'm responsible for the Google document that we all work on together that will have our agenda, and we'll be typing notes into it. I am also responsible for hosting the meeting, making sure that the meeting is running smoothly. And then about 50% of the time I'm a participant. So I will be, actively engaged in the meeting, but I'm not responsible for those hosting duties. I respond to member requests a lot because they are my number one client. And I spend about 2 hours a day making sure that whatever their needs are met. I do a lot of social media content creation, and that's about 1 hour a day. Again, someone else is responsible for the listening part. So my part is mostly the creation of that social media. And then I also do project management. So that's 1 to 2 hours a day, depending on the day, just making sure that the tasks are completed for each of the projects that I have. I do email all day. So I start with email. First thing I do is I open my email and I read through to see what's kind of coming up for the day. I might not respond to everything right away, but I do look at everything just to make sure that I know what needs to be responded to first. So I always start the day with email. I typically keep my email open during the day, although I might, be in a meeting and not looking at it for a couple of hours, and then I'll come back maybe at lunch and look at it before I go get some food. And then before I leave for the day, I also make sure that I check that email. And I typically log off around 5. And one of the really cool things about ICPSR, excuse me, one of the cool things about ICPSR is that in like a traditional marketing firm, 5 o'clock is not typically a time you would be logging off. You might be logging off at like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. And that's really fun for a long time. I've done that too. And there's costs and benefits to that. You might not have much of a life, but you might work with people that you love. And so you're working with your friends and it doesn't feel like it's that much work. Both of those are valuable. But at this stage of my life, I have a child. So I really can't be doing work at that time. And I have found a place where I work really hard from 8 to 5. And then I can pretty much log off and I'm available if emergencies come up, but I am able to kind of leave that work. And that is, it's really important to know what works for your lifestyle. Maybe you just don't want to wake up at 8 a.m. And for me, I have to be on at 8 o'clock in the morning. But if you're more of a person who wants to start work at like 10 and you're fine with working until, 6 or 7 at night, then look for a job that does that. And a lot of times you can flex it. So at ICPSR, we have people who start at 10. We have people who start at 6 p.m. You can start at different times. Really, it's about making sure that your work gets done. So what are some of the skills that are important for my job? So going back to that marketing question, what skills do you need? Communications foremost. You need written and verbal communication. So this is a picture of me presenting to a group of future research scientists. And I put this picture in here because the groups that I speak to may vary widely during the day. So today I have talked to a group of faculty members who probably make $300,000 a year each. I'm talking to you. After this, I'm going to talk to a group of colleagues that includes people who are data curators, which means that they work in data all the time. It also includes people who are project managers. And it also includes people who are kind of high level leadership within our institution. Yesterday, I was talking to a dean about the different data that are available at ICPSR, the dean of a academic institution. And then later on in the day, yesterday, I was talking to a librarian at that same institution. So I talked to lots of different people at different times during the day. And part of my job is making sure that I know how to communicate correctly to those different audiences. And I do that both written and verbal. So like I said, I'm on email all the time, and I'm also doing these presentations verbally. So those are both super important. Relationship management is key. I work with some people who have been representatives of our member institutions for 20 years, and they care a lot about how things have been done and how things continue and progress to be done. I also work a lot with new people. So creating that new relationship is just as important as keeping the relationships that have been over time. This is also important for sales. So I don't do a lot of sales, but it is important that I have that in the back of my mind, that these are people who are paying for a service, and we need to make sure that they're getting the service in the way that they expect to. And that's a big part of that relationship management and of sales in general. And then detail orientation. If you had asked me, years ago, if I ever thought that detail orientation would be part of my work, I would have said, heck no, there's no way. But it's true. Like I said, I do a ton of spreadsheets. I also do a lot of invoices. And when you're responsible for invoices for $4 million, it gets a little, nail bitey. So making sure that you've got the zeros in the right place is really important. So if you are not a detail-oriented person, this is something that you can learn. And I'm an example of that. You can find tons of videos on YouTube that show you examples of how to learn detail orientation. And there's lots of volunteer jobs that you can take to that will help you get this skill if you don't have it already. Flexibility is a big part of my job. If you are the kind of person who expects things to be the way that they were, that, you start a day and you look at your, what your day is going to be like, and you expect it to stay like that, and that's important to you, marketing is probably not for you. But if you are the kind of person who looks at your day and then all of a sudden, somebody tags you on Twitter and they say, hey, I used ICPSR to write this article that is now going to be featured in Nature magazine. And then all of a sudden you get 100 tweets and 100 Instagram messages and 100 people on Facebook going, hey, look, there's this article that has ICPSR data. And all of a sudden you have to pivot and go work on that thing and leave your other projects and make sure you know how to manage the time on which ones need to get done when. It's very exciting. It's really fun, but it's also wild. So being flexible really, really helps with that. And then creativity and innovation. I mention this because so much of my job is about how can we do this thing more efficiently? Or how can we do this thing? How can we solve this problem in a better way for this client and also save money and also do it with less people and do it, more automated? So thinking through those problems, it really is like a puzzle. Someone at ICPSR describes it as being like Sherlock Holmes. You have to kind of take these pieces and figure out how they fit together. And we love that. We love that part of our job. And there's so many people at ICPSR who talk about that. So if that's something that you really like, ICPSR is a great place for that, but just marketing in general can be a really fun exercise in that. Okay, I'm realizing that I'm short on time, so I'm going to go through these things quickly. My education timeline, I started at a community college. I started studying marketing and then I never finished it. And I ended up going to a BA in English literature, and I did a certificate in corporate social responsibility. And then I did a master's degree in what's called social entrepreneurship and change. So that's kind of like an MBA, but for people who care about not just making profit, but also care about the planet and care about people. They call it the triple bottom line. So all three of those things: people, profit, and planet. MBA is typically just about profit. I mentioned here, I have no marketing degree, and that's okay because I've gained so much experience that I'm able to do this work. This is me at Pepperdine when we hosted the March Madness. Here's my career timeline. So I started at this place called Mervin's that doesn't even exist anymore. It was a retail organization. And then I worked at a coffee shop. Through those two, so at Mervin's, I had to try and sell credit cards for Mervin's. Turns out that sales experience was really helpful for the work that I do now, because now I'm helping to sell memberships. I used to work at a coffee shop that was so valuable for learning how to manage my time. You know how coffee shops get crazy where there's a 1,000 people out the door and you have to get their orders right and you have to get them in order and you have to manage, okay, am I making a cold drink? Am I making a hot drink? Does it need ice? What happened to the ice? All those things that you have to manage along your shift were really, really important to help me hone my time management skills. I worked at a nonprofit called Greenpeace. That's an environmental based nonprofit. I mention this because it did help me with my career, but I also met my husband who was not working at Greenpeace. He just was, the work that I was doing led me to meet him. So again, you never really know what your work is going to bring you. And then I went back to school and I started volunteering for the Red Cross while I was at school. And during my work at the Red Cross, my volunteer work, there were some really big fires in California and they were hiring for a position and I applied for it. And because I had been volunteering with them and doing really good work as a volunteer, they hired me. And then from my work at Pepperdine, because of the type of work that I was doing, managing a community of people, the Pepperdine was opening up this new job position that was about managing communities. And they were looking for someone who had done that before. And someone had seen me give a presentation at something. And they said, hey, we think that she might be good for this position. And so that's how I ended up at Pepperdine. And then through Pepperdine, I met the dean of this school, who was starting this new program called Social Entrepreneurship and Change, and it was a master's program. And that's how I ended up going to the master's program that I eventually graduated from. And I had to have that degree or a degree like that in order to have the job that I have now. So funny how those things all connect to you. And then at Pepperdine, the position that I had, the funding went away for that whole center. And that happens so often. And so after Pepperdine, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And then I really wanted to work in a social enterprise. And wouldn't you know it, a social enterprise popped up that actually happened to be very close to my house. So I started working there and I was able to walk there. And it was just absolutely wonderful. And I loved what I was doing. And then through that, because I was working at this social enterprise, UCLA was looking for someone who could kind of manage. The program was about connecting students to understand what they were doing, what they were learning theoretically, like from their textbooks, and connecting that with an alum who had graduated from UCLA, who is now using that thing in their everyday life. And part of that work was people who were working in social enterprises. So because I had that experience, I was able to transfer to UCLA. And because I was working at UCLA, when I had my child and we wanted to move back to Michigan to be closer to family, I was able to, work through that experience and the rest of my resume to be able to get this position at ICPSR. So that's a whirlwind. Here's my volunteer timeline. I think this is vital because everybody needs to have volunteer experience. And I know I'm close on time, so I promise I'm going.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, totally. So here's my volunteer timeline. I started working in children's theater. That helped me get my first job. Then I worked at the Ronald McDonald House, which is helping children who are going through hospital stays. That introduced me to my future boss. I worked at the Red Cross where I volunteered first and then I got hired. I volunteered at this place called the Junior League for a long time. I also met a future boss there. I volunteered with an organization called Hats Off for Cancer. And because I volunteered with them for so long, even though some of my jobs I was only at for a couple of years at a time, I kept volunteering for Hats Off for so long that the jobs that I was applying to were saying, oh, okay, she does have longevity in her career because she stayed at this volunteer work for so long. I volunteered in Kenya, and because I have this international volunteer experience, that really does set my resume apart. Not everyone can do that particular thing, but you will be able to find something that sets your resume apart, and chances are it's going to be something you do that's volunteering. And then I did local government. That is volunteer. You don't get paid for that. And it showed supervisory skills. So even though, for positions where I didn't supervise someone before, I was able to show that I was supervising people in a volunteer way. Couple of things to market yourself. I've mentioned that I have a website. Here's an example. So this is my website, and this is clickable. So when you get this, these slides, you'll have this. This is my my Twitter. I try to be active on Twitter, and the reason for that is that if I was applying for a job, someone could go to my Twitter and say, I want to learn more about this person, and then they would actually learn more about me because of the things that I have been tweeting over time. This is really helpful if you're tweeting something every day. That's really good for your search engine optimization for your name, so that if you are applying for a job, someone would search for your name and then your Twitter would come up quickly. And that's really good for them to get to know you a little better. Some suggestions for roles like this: volunteering for marketing roles at nonprofits, big and small nonprofits. You can work through Volunteer Match. That's a quick way to find volunteer roles. Do Google Analytics certification. If you do nothing else, do that, because Google Analytics certification will help you no matter what job you try to get. They will look at that and they will go, okay, cool. They understand metrics. They understand how to look at the back end of a system. They understand how to use digital systems. So much value out of that. And it's free. And then if you are looking to do marketing, HubSpot has free certifications. Again, you'll get all of these slides with those links after. We are hiring. You're going to get the slide with these links. We are constantly changing what we're hiring. So we're growing like wild. So these are positions that we have open right now, but there's always more coming up. And then quickly, if I was applying for my job right now, I would try to demonstrate my technical skills. So if I was putting in my resume and my cover letter, I would say, I know how to use MailChimp. I know how to use Hootsuite. I would show the times that I have supervised and how many people. I would give examples of how my social media posted, how many people read them, how many people clicked through. Some Google Analytics information to show that I know how to use metrics and how to track whether the things I'm doing are working. And then finally, on that job description, when you're applying, go line by line in that job description and make sure that your resume and your cover letter address every point that's in there. And those are my quick suggestions for if you're applying for jobs. Quick parting thoughts. Here's a couple of my favorite resources. Don't Be Such a Scientist is a great book for would-be marketers. It's about how to distill down complex thoughts into something that's easy for people to understand. Bystander intervention training is valuable for everyone, and you can get it for free from Hollaback. 80,000 Hours is about how to do good in your job, how to make a difference in the world. So if that's something you're interested in, you can also sign up for their jobs email newsletter, and they'll send you new jobs all the time. And then Marie Forleo is one of my favorites. She wrote this book called Everything is Figure Outable. It's just so helpful. And she has a great YouTube that shows you kind of how to figure out some of, those thorny problems. Oh my gosh, Michelle, I'm almost done, I swear. What you do next, make email part of your daily routine. And if you don't have one, create a signature. This is my signature. Yours does not need to be nearly this long. I just wanted you to have an example of what a professional email signature might look like. Update your LinkedIn. People are looking at your LinkedIn and will be when you're applying for jobs. You can connect with me and I will accept you. So please find me. And again, that I think Michelle's going to post that into the chat, or you'll get this afterwards. And then take a free certificate course. It can only help your resume. And that's it. Thank you so much. I'm going to leave this up here for just a second. If you want to take a quick shot of this with your phone camera, You can get me connected this way, or again, you're going to get all of this in email later.